Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. This is the second video on the series of how to create the SDTM mapping specification. Today we will be discussing about how to create the specification for AE domain. AE domain is the domain where we not only annotate or provide logics for the annotated variables on the CRF, we also have to provide logics for the derived variables such as the AE sequence or the DY variables. Apart from that, we also have the MedDRA coded dictionary variables as well. The MedDRA coded variables are the variables which you will never find on your CRF form. So how we are going to proceed and with these variables logic and from where we will get the information for these variables is something which we see in this video. So let's start with the annotated CRF. Again, for this video, I'm using the same study which I used in my last video for DM domain. And in this study, this is an open label study where we have a particular drug being given, and this is a dose escalation study. So we know that each subject will receive the same drug. The only difference is that the dosage of that drug is going to be different. So right now we have a form in our CRF where we are capturing whether there were any adverse event experienced by the subjects. And there is a radio button of yes or no. Based on the response, whether it is yes or no, we will either have the A form populated or we will not have. So once we have the response populated as yes here, then we will have the adverse event form added, and that form is this one. So right now you can see that we have a AE form which we have annotated to adverse event form, and in this form we have the specific questions. So right now, although we have the A sequence variable here, we are not going to use this variable in the submission, but this variable will be used to populate some other variables. We will see where it will be used. This is not the SDTM AE sequence value which will be captured here, but something else for the data traceability. So right now in this form, you can see we have the AETERM, A start date populated along with their A end date. We also have the ongoing question whether the adverse event which was reported is ongoing or not. If the response to this question is yes, then we will not have the end date populated. Instead of it, the ENRF will be populated as ongoing. Similarly, we have the severity for this form where we have the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, 4, and 5 along with their mild, moderate, severe, life-threatening, and death. Right now, you can see the blank annotation. This is what you are here seeing is the blank annotation. That means that this variable was used while designing the aCRF form, the questionnaire form, the form which is being used here. But this is not the SDTM annotation. The SDTM annotation is the one where you can see it is in the red text in the blue box here. So while CRF was created, they have populated the severity in the column A severe of your AE dataset. A is the raw dataset here. Right now in this study, we are not going to use the SDTM variable AESEV, that is the severity, but instead we are going to use the toxicity grade variable, because of which we are annotating this information, that is the grade level information, in our AETOX-GR variable. Another thing to note here is, again, which you might find in many other studies also, that we are having relationship question being asked for more than one drug. So right now, as you can see in this study, we have a relationship to Paxlital, whatever it is being asked, and the relationship to the ORIC 101. Right now, the ORIC 101 is my study drug, because of which the response to this question, whether it was related or not, will go to my SDTM AEREL core variable, whereas the relationship to the other drug will go in a subcore variable. Similarly, you have in action taken for the other drug, and that information will go in your subqual variable, but to populate my AEACN of the SDTM domain, we will have to use the action taken for my study drug, which is the ORIC 101. So you can see the distinction here. Next comes the AE, AC, and other. So right now in this form, we have three different categories, that whether the action taken, one is the none, that is no action was taken, then this checkbox will be clicked. If the concomitant medication was given, then this check will be given, and we will note down the concomitant medication information here, that which concomitant medication, or you can say this is a log line which you will see to connect the CM and your AE domain, or connect, or in other words, to create the rel-rec between CM and AE domain. So this information is important to create the rel-rec here. So right now, this number, which is giving the number of my CM record, is captured in this particular variable of my AE raw data set, and this is this information, the CM number will go in my AESPID variable, whereas the action taken, whether it is non-concurrent medication or the concurrent procedures, will go, or even the discontinued study information will go in my AEAC and other variable, and we will see how this will be populated, or how we have to give the logic to populate the information of AEAC and other for all these four values in a few minutes. Similarly, if you see for concurrent procedures also, you have a number being captured. Again, this is something which is the log line to the procedure information in your PR domain. So again, the number here will give the record position of your procedure, which is done in your PR domain, and it is captured in this particular variable of your A raw data set. Again, this information is going to be captured in my SDTM AE record in the AESPID variable. We will see how the AESPID again is going to be populated from both of these information in few minutes. The next information which we have in your aCRF is the outcome, which you will have from here, and we have the AE out populated. Then comes the severity and its dependent variables. So if we have the severity as yes, then definitely at least one of the severity criteria variables should be populated, or in this case checked. So we have the death information, life-threatening hospitalization information, clinically significant abnormalities, or the other medically important information variable being captured or annotated here. This is another information which is being captured, and this is something which we are going to capture in your subqual, because we do not have a dedicated SDTM core variable for this variable. So right now, this is the information which we have captured in your CRF of AE. You might have noticed that we are not capturing any of the MedDRA dictionary terms variable here, which is obvious we will not capture here. We are only capturing the term. Another point to note here is that in this form, there is no AE pre-specified in your CRF form. So because of which, in my study, the AE press variable will be of no use. And hence, since it's a permissible variable, I'm not going to provide any logic, or we will mention that this variable is not required in our AE domain. So now let's go to the AE spec, how we are going to create. So again, how to get these variables and their labels, type, role, identifier, the core variable information, or the code list, which is being applied to each or respective variables. This is something which we can get from the SDTM IG, which you are using. Right now in this study, I have used the 3.2 version, but again, the question arises is that are we going to follow the tedious process of copy pasting the name and label from my PDF file to my Excel file? Although it can be done, but again, it is a tedious and time consuming. So I have already given a better method on how to get this information in my first video on DM domain. So if you have not watched that video, I request you to watch to at least and know how to get this information within a minutes of time, and you will not need to write each and every information. You will just need to copy paste from the Excel format of your SDTM IG version. You can see from where you can derive the or download the SDTM IG version in your Excel format in that video. So coming back to your AE domain here. So right now in this study, I know that the study ID is 101-18101. As you can see from the CRF also, that it is mentioned somewhere here. Along with that, you will also see it in the protocol. So definitely you can get this information from these documents. Along with the data set also, you will get this information. So you can directly mention that this is the study ID, and we know the domain is AE. The U subject will be the study ID and subnum concatenation. So right now, this can be from the AE as well as from DM domain. So right now, this is the raw data set, raw AE data set, which I'm showing you. So right now, the subject number is the already having the concatenation of the site number and the subject number here. So because of that, I'm using the complete information from subnum variable of my raw data set to populate the U subject ID along with the study ID separated by hyphen. So this is something which we have already discussed in detail in DM, so I'm not going further in detail of this variable. We will come back to the A sequence at last. Although here, if you see the order, variable order for A sequence, it's 4, but when you are going to program A sequence, this is the variable which you will program at the end of your code. Why, we will get to know in few minutes again. So we will come back to this variable once we are done with the other information. In my study, I do not have the group ID information either mentioned in my raw data set or somewhere from the CRF. So because of this, I do not need to keep this variable. Hence, again, this is a permissible variable, so I can drop it. So right now, I'm not going to mention any logic from where this information is being captured or derived. So in case you do have this information being captured somewhere, either in your raw data set or in your CRF, you can use accordingly from there. Coming to the ref ID. So earlier I showed you that the first question here in your AE form was having the variable of A.A sequence. So right now, what is happening is this question is capturing the record position of your uh, of your AE for a particular subject in your AE data set. So if you see the data right now, the A sequence variable here, this form initially is the adverse event yes or no, because of which we have only the yes information captured or the no information, rest of it is blank. So we are going to check from the adverse event form, which we are just seeing here, the second form. And in this adverse event form, you will see the A sequence is being populated with some values, 1, 2, 3, some values is populated. So what this value is, this is the record position for the adverse event experienced by the subject. So if you see here that we have this first subject, and for first subject for this particular adverse event, we have given a sequence value of 1. And similarly, the second record is for the second subject. So again, we are starting it with 1. So it depends upon how the CRF form was designed and how it is populated. But in short, this is giving the record position. Let me filter on one subject to get a better idea. So let's filter on this. So right now, if you see for the first subject or the only one subject, you will see that this subject experienced 9 adverse events. And for each adverse event, we have given a unique record position from when we were entering the data in your CRF form. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9. So this information, which is coming from the CRF, is being mapped to your ref ID to give the traceability. If you will see here, this information is also can be seen in a way that this value will give the traceability from the SDTM to your raw data set, know that which record of SDTM comes from which record from the raw data set, or hence the annotated CRF. So we are going to capture it from the raw dataset AE sequence variable. Next is the speed variable. So here we have seen in this form that the speed variable was coming from two informations. One was from the CM number, the other was from the concurrent procedures number. And this information was captured in these two variables, that is ACM sequence or the ACP sequence. So now let's see these two variables in your data. I have still filtered on the first subject only to understand this information. Okay. Sorry, I have to take some time. So here it is, this variable, we are having the one record, that there is one record for which the adverse event has resulted in the intake of your concomitant medication. Although for the CP sequence, we do not have any such record where because of any A, we have a clean procedure being done. So based right now, this is the subject where only CM sequence is populated. Let's see another subject where both of these is populated. So right now, for the second subject which I have filtered, you can see that for this particular AE, we have two concurrent medication being taken, and both record position is being added in your CM sequence variable here, that separated by a comma. And similarly for the procedure, concurrent procedures also, we can see there were four procedures being done for each respective AE which has happened. So now to use this information, how we are going to populate is we are going to concatenate these two information separated by hyphen, and for CM sequence, we will initialize with the value of CM and CP. Right now, if you will see, we have CM hyphen and CP hyphen. So we will use this value, that is CP space, the value which is being captured here, and then the CP space, the value here. So accordingly, we are going to populate here is that if it is from this variable, we will use the value of CM, then the number of the value which is given here, which is coming from this variable, CM, concatenate this variable, then concatenate the hyphen for the second variable, which is the, sorry, hyphen, then the second variable which will go here, the C in, this is concomitant procedure value, and then we will again concatenate this value. So this will, in this format, you can populate the value for this speed. Coming back to CM term, which is direct forward, which is captured in your adverse event. So directly we will populate from the AE term variable in your raw data set. So we can copy from raw data set as it is. Now comes the modify. Again, this is a permissible variable, and you might not see this variable often used in the SDTM domain. But in case when your A term, which is being the free text value which is added, is not sufficient or correct enough to identify the decode value, then we have to change the A term or value to a better verbatim term, because of which, if that is done, then the modified AE term, which is the verbatim term, is mentioned in your modify AE modify variable. If this is done, only then you will use the AE modify variable. Otherwise, this variable is not going to be used in your SDTM domain. And since it's a permissible variable, we can drop this variable. Again, in this study, we do not have the AE modify, so we will drop this variable. Now comes the MedDRA coding variables. So right now you can see there is a list of MedDRA coded variables which are going to be populated in your AE domain. So from where this information is going to come. We have seen that this information is not populated in your CRF, or it is not coming from CRF. So how it is going, from where we are getting this information. So whenever you are having any A form field, when the investigator fills the data of adverse events, that information is with your data management team people. And within that team, we do also have one team, which is the medical uh, coding team. And once the data is entered, whether it's in RAVE or Oracle Clinical, it's generated. The generated data, the extracts which we have taken for the study, that will be passed to your MedDRA coding team, and the meta coding team, based on the values of your A term, or even if your modify is mentioned, will use that information to do the dictionary coding. So this is something which is done at the DM team level. So when we say that the adverse event is having the dictionary coding, what does that mean is that based on your A term, the DM people will derive your AEDECOD, and in return you will have the all these informations populated. That is the LLT code, which will be the code numeric code, then the LLT, the character value of the code here, the low level term, the preferred term and its code, the high level term and code, high level group term code, system organ class code, and its term. So you can see that these values are being derived here from your DM team. So this is something which you should know if you are undergoing any interviews. Then the interview people can ask that from where you get the MedDRA coding done and how it is done. So this is the way you will do the MedDRA coding, and this data is only visible in your raw data set, and it will not be in your CRF data. So once you will see the raw data set, you will get the variable from which you can get the information, and accordingly you can use to populate these variables. So right now, based on the name and the code value, I have given for my LLT code, PT code, HLT, HLGT, all these terms and code accordingly. Another point to note here is the PT term is populated as your AED code in your adverse event dataset. So make sure that when you are populating the AED code, you are doing it correctly. Next are the category and subcategory variables. In this study, again, we cannot see the categorization of adverse event being done. And since these are permissible variables, we have dropped this variable. However, if in your study, any categorization has been done, then these variable will definitely be annotated on your CRF form. So have a look in your CRF form whether you have the annotation done for AE category or AES category. If yes, then you can use uh, those variables which are annotated to these variables, and accordingly write your programming logic. The next is the AE-PRESP. As we have seen that there was no adverse event pre-specified in your CRF form here, and you can see that the adverse event is a free text, and the investigator has to enter the value by himself, and there is no pre-selected adverse event information here. Because of this, in this study, the A press variable is going to be of no use, and hence this variable is again dropped from this study, and we are not using any logic to populate. However, if in your study you do have the adverse event being pre-specified, then for the A terms which are pre-specified, you will mention that for these terms, the A press variable is populated as Y. The next again is the BODSYS and these BODSYS code, uh, system organ class and system organ class code. And these are also the MedDRA codings. So we are already discussed the MedDRA coding, how we are going to populate. It's the same thing. So we are going to use the MedDRA coding variables, which we have got from the raw data set, to populate these four variables. The next is the location. This variable is again not required in my study because we do not have this information captured anywhere, or even it's present in the raw data set. So this is going to be dropped. However, if this variable is applicable to your study, it will definitely be annotated in your CRF form. So you look out for the annotation for AE location. Next comes the AE severity. So now, as I mentioned that in my study, we are only capturing the severity information as the toxicity grade and not as the severity. Normally, either the severity or the toxicity grade is being used in the study. There are very rare instances where both are used, but normally only one of either the A severity or the A toxicity is being used in your study. However, if both are used, then definitely you can see the requirements of your protocol and your sponsors, how they are being used and being annotated and captured. For this study, since we do not have the severity variable, again, my severity variable is being dropped, and we are going to use this information which is captured as severity, but it is grade 1, grade 2, grade 4, and 5. It's going to be populated in my A toxicity grade. Next is the seriousness, where the adverse event is serious, yes or no. So we have already seen earlier that this is a yes no question, and we are capturing from this particular variable. So that is mentioned here. And the second is the action taken with study treatment. So again, please note the label clearly tells it is with study treatment, because of which when we had the action taken with the other drug, which is not my study drug, that information is not going to be populated in AESEN, the SDTM core variable, but it's going to be populated as an subqual, because this information is important and cannot be dropped. So due to lag of SDTM core variable, we are populating in your subqual domain. So the A action with my study drug is going to be populated in my AEACN, and it is being captured in your AEACN2 variable of my SDTM, raw data set. Similarly is the case for the relationship as well, which we have discussed. So in relationship also, we are using the AEREL2. The another thing is the A action other. So now let's see how it is populated. For the A action other, we can see that for other action taken, check all that applies. So what we have is we have 4 categories, whether it is none, that means no action was taken. Another one is that concurrent medication was taken. Another one is concurrent procedures was done, or the fourth is that the subject discontinued the study. So out of these 4, uh, either one or more than one can be selected. And you have the information populated in your raw data set in these respective variables. Let's see these variables. So right now I'm showing you the variables which we are talking about, that is the action taker, other, none, other CM, and the other CP, and this is the discontinuation. So this variable, this variable, this and this, these are the four variables. So you can see at a time more than one variables can also be populated. So in this case you can see the CM as well as the CP variable was being populated. So how we are going to populate the AE action other? When only one of these four variables is being marked as X, then we will be populating accordingly. That means that if only none is being marked as X, then the AE action will be kept as missing because no action was taken. But if concurrent medication box is being clicked and it is the only box being clicked, then we will mention the AE action other as the concurrent medication. Similarly for the concurrent procedure and discontinued study. But however, as we can see from the data, the case where more than one variable is being populated, in that case, you can see that annotation says that we have to populate the AE action other as multiple, and what are the multiple values that will go in your AE action, AE, AC, and OT 1 and 2 subqual variables. So right now, when you are going to populate the logic, you can say that when the first which was the none one, none action was taken is marked as X, then we have to keep it missing. For the CM variable is masked as X, then with concurrent medication, CP1, concurrent procedure, the fourth one as discontinued study. Please note that I am focusing here is that if only these variables are populated. However, when it will be populated as multiple, when more than one of these variables is populated as X. The information which is populated in your subqual is going to be mapped or will be created in your subqual mapping spec. So I will be covering the subqual mapping spec as a separate video. Right now I'm talking about only the core variables of the particular domain. Coming on to the next variable, again, these two variables are not being used in my study, so I have dropped. However, these two variables, if captured, will be captured in your CRF form and hence will have a CRF annotation done. So you can refer from there and use it. We have the AE out populated in your CRF form, and that was annotated in my AE out variable of my raw data set. So I'm going to use it from there as it is. Right now for this, we have a AE out code list being used. So make sure when you are using the AE out variable from from the raw data set, it is in sync with my code list. That means sometimes the value which is captured in my AE out here right now, you can see in this variable, we can use the AE out description instead of AE out. However, it is in the proper case. And so what we need to do is we have to make sure that this variable value is being in sync with my code list. So if it is in proper case and my code list is asking to populate in whole caps, then we have to comply with it and accordingly change it. So although we are not going to explicitly mention in your logic here, but since it is clear that it is a code list being applied, so we have to make sure that whatever value is coming from this variable, it is in sync with my code list. This code list we can also mention as a AE out code list because that is the code list name. However, if you will see the code list code, this is the code which you will see from this control terminology for your SDTM A out variable, which is the A outcome code list. So right now, all this information is coming from my Excel file of your SDTM IG version 2. IG version 3.2. So, or you can mention as AE out also, which was given in your IG here as this AE out. Same, I do not have the involves cancer variable, so I'm dropping. It will be annotated if it is used. The next variables are the variables which will tell about the seriousness of the adverse event. So if these variables are populated right now, you can see these variables. Again, these are the seriousness criteria, and you can click the checkbox whichever is applicable. So if these variables are being checked, if these variables are being selected, then we have the SDTM variable populated as Y. So from this area, you can see what are the dedicated CRF defined AE variables here, and accordingly you can derive your SDTM variables also. So we have mentioned that it will be set to Y if the respective variable is populated to as X. So if you see the data also, in data you can see that wherever the value is X, then that means that variable, that particular seriousness criteria is checked. So here it was checked for hospitalization for this subject. So you can see there are many records where the hospitalization happened. There is other also happening. There is one record where for one subject, the death has also happened. So you can see the respective variables are populated as X. So accordingly, you can use here for all the 8 criteria, seriousness criteria variables. I do not have the SOD occurred with overdose variable, so it is being not added. And similarly for the concomitant or additional treatment given variable also is not being used in my study, so these are not being added. All these variables which are not added will, if they are present in your study, will definitely be annotated in your CRF form, so you can get to know from there. Now comes the toxicity grade. We have discussed that since in this study we have the A severity capturing the toxicity, which is the grade 1, 2, 3. So we can populate from there the toxicity grade. Next is the date. That is the start date, end date. So we have captured the start date and end date in your CRF form. So from STDAT and ENDAT variables, you can get the start date and end date variables populated here. And it will be populated in ISO format. So I have already applied the format, mentioned the format in the format column. So we know that these two variables should be used to get this information, and it should be populated in the ISO format. Another point is the ENRF. So when the ongoing question is being responded as yes, then the ENRF will be populated as ongoing, otherwise it will be kept as null. So because of this, we have given that AENRF will be ongoing if your ongoing variable from the raw data set is populated as yes. So that is being also mentioned accordingly in your logic. The variables which are highlighted in yellow are the ones which are not needed in my study, so it's being not used. And another point to note for the duration is that although we can derive the duration from your start date and end date, but this is something which we will not do in your SDTM programming. SDTM programming is done only on the collected variables. Right now, this variable, if it would have been collected in your CRF, then we would definitely have kept this variable in your SDTM domain, but we are not going to derive this information. If we need this information will be derived in your ADAM level, but not at the SDTM level. Now coming back to the dy variables, that is the start day and end day variables. So to derive these variables, we will have to use the study reference start date variable from my DM domain. So to derive the stdy, I know that if my start date is greater than or equal to your reference start date, then I will use this particular algorithm to populate the dy. That is, we will subtract the date part of my STDTC with the RFDTC, and we will add one only when my start date is greater than or equal to your reference start date. If it is less than the reference start date, we will not add +1, and we will just find the difference between these two dates. We will drop the time part if the time part is captured. We will not use the time part, only the date part. Same is the case with the E and dy variable, that if the E end date is greater than equal to reference start date, we will calculate the day by subtracting the two dates, that is the end date and the reference start date, but adding +1. However, we will not add +1 if the end date is less than the reference start date. So in this way, these two variables can also be derived. So once you have programmed or for each and every variable here in your AE domain, the last step which you will have to do is to derive the AE sequence variable. So now how to derive the AE sequence variable? To derive the AE sequence variable, what we have to do is we have to sort the AE dataset by the key variables. Now the question is how we will know what are the key variables. Key variables are the variables which you will get from your structure of your adverse event. So as you can see from the SDTM ID, the structure of your adverse event is one record per adverse event per subject. You can also refer your chapter 3 here. Here in also you will see in adverse event this table, that is the table 3 to 1. You will have in your A, you have the key variables mentioned here, that is the keys here. So using these information, you will sort the data based on these variables, and then you will derive or assign a unique value to the records which are being derived. So right now, you can also use the study IDs. Study ID, use subject ID, decode, A start date. If it is sufficient, this information is sufficient, as these are normally the key variables, then you can definitely generate the unique ID. But in some scenarios, this information does not uniquely identify your record. In that case, the next variable which you can use is your end date variable. So because of right now, to make you understand, I have used the end date as well. But however, as I have shown, based on the key variables defined in your SDTM IG, you can use that key variable, sort the final adverse event data set by the key variables, and provide a unique ID for each record, which you can populate as your sequence variable. So in this way, you can generate the the adverse event mapping spec and the coding as well. Hope you like this video. Do share your comments and let me know if you want me to cover any specific topic. Thanks for watching.